excited to talk to two super women today, Assia and Rachel from Muse Capital. Girls, tell us what you do and how you got there.
Thank you for having us, first of all.
Yes.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah, happy to tell you more. Goodness me. So Assia and I run an early stage venture capital firm based out of Los Angeles, California.
Called Muse Capital.
We are early stage consumer tech investors with a focus on underserved markets. So what does that mean? We like to invest in areas where the typical Silicon Valley investor does not or is overlooked. And so as consumer investors, we invest across three major buckets that we think are affecting the consumer in major ways over the next 10 years. Our first bucket is how we care, and that involves women's health, which the two of us are extremely passionate about. And very proud to say we've invested in everything from egg freezing to telehealth for postpartum services to a 360-degree care clinic for women over 40, reimagining pediatric care. So basically multi-billion-dollar industries that have had, a real lack of innovation and disruption, because if you look at the people that typically back these businesses, they certainly don't look like us. And so very proud of our women's health portfolio. And also in that care bucket is the future of childcare. And so I think COVID shone a light on how broken that whole industry was and how much pressure was put onto the mothers in society. And so, we're investing in technologies that make that whole process better. Everything from software technology that's put into daycare centers, because we think it's ridiculous that in this day and age, you're looking for daycare on Yelp, where you find a smoothie. And so let's invest in things that make this a little bit easier for the modern family. So that's our care bucket. And then the second area that we invest in is the future of how we play. Now, I'm not sure how many people have young children on this podcast, but at Muse Capital, we see the play bucket, including gaming. And gaming, we believe, is just entertainment, period. It's not just the days of sitting at home with a PlayStation controller and staring at a screen. It's actually the future of entertainment. And just some stats here. So gaming as an industry is 30% bigger than the entire film and music industries combined. And we know this because all of our friends in the music and film world are desperate to try and figure out how to do deals with the likes of Roblox and Fortnite, because that's where the younger audience are hanging out. But what's interesting about this sector is in the gaming industry, even though I think 48% of gaming enthusiasts are actually female, everything that's built in this world is for men. And so an example of that is us investing in a female-led gaming studio that's actually building, games and social experiences for women.
It's called Wonderworks.
Yes. And so that's our in the play bucket. And then our final bucket is the future of how we live. And that's an area where we're looking at key consumer trends like wellness and sustainability, which is very, very important, as I'm sure you know, for many consumers today. And so they're the things that we invest in. Assia and I have now been doing this for 8 years.
On the Muse front, we started Muse 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. We started off with a proof of concept fund, which was a $2 million fund, which we then took and invested into 9 businesses. And those nine businesses, we had 2 exits pretty quickly. We returned the fund, and that fund is now at a 10.8x MOIC, which is an extremely high number for those of you who don't know the metrics. And then we took that data and we went off and raised our $13 million fund, 1.3, that was at the end of 2020, actually just the beginning of 2020. So we were able to deploy quite a nice chunk of capital over the course of COVID, which, as you know, accelerated technology and in all these areas that we just mentioned. So we invested in 30 businesses out of that fund. We also raised a $21 million SPV bucket to invest in a few more growth companies for our investors, our strategic investors in the fund. And then now we're investing out of our $45 million fund, which we're extremely proud of. That fund we are now halfway through that raise, but we've been deploying that fund for the last year. We've made 6 investments. And so, yes, 8 years later, we are now more than 45 companies in. A large majority of our companies have had after we've invested, they've had follow-on rounds by the best in the business, from Wellington to let's name drop a little bit, Rachel, Andreessen, Goldman Sachs, one of our companies in the women's health space, which is a company called Mommy, which is a postpartum telemedicine company that actually she chased down when she was in her maternity leave a few years ago. That company was, after we invested, was led by Goldman Sachs, and it was the earliest that Goldman Sachs has ever gone into a company in the history of Goldman Sachs. So it just goes to show we're definitely ahead of the curve. We've been doing this before starting Muse. Both of us had quite a career in all of these areas that we're now investing in, and it's really great to put our money and checks behind our 20-year career.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's so impressive to listen to you two. What would you say is your main motivator?
I think, well, I don't know how much we've talked about, I guess, our superpowers. There's a lot of funds out there. And I think the very long story short is Assia and I have spent the last 30 years combined working with decision makers across Fortune 500s, athletes, sports teams, celebrities, influencers,
tech founders,
traditionally in a business development capacity, where we were originally doing deals between those groups. And then over the last 15 years, we actually ended up doing that exclusively for technology companies. And to give one example, Assia was very early Spotify when the founder, Daniel Ek, had just proven out the model in Sweden. And Assia came on board and helped him do pretty transformative partnerships with major telecom businesses or brands to launch Spotify into new markets. So when we talk about our edge, we have been doing that level of business development for tier 1 consumer companies for a long time. And so in terms of what we're very excited about, we started Muse to become one of the most helpful investors on the cap table, because traditionally in venture capital, they would write a check and come back in 10 years and see if you succeeded or not. And for Assia and I, we knew that all we knew how to do was to help. And so for us, the things that excited us were, why is it that there aren't more venture capitalists that actually really help these entrepreneurs? And even more importantly, as we got into venture capital and just the whole industry in general, we realized that there were hardly any women that were actually writing checks. And so for us, we thought, goodness, we get the opportunity to start our own fund. We get the opportunity to be value add in a way that all of the other investors are not. And we get to apply that to, young female entrepreneurs that I wish we had a dollar for every time that we walk into a room and the entrepreneurs are like, wow, like this is not the typical investor that you see. And even more importantly, you can actually help. And so that's kind of our philosophy at Muse. And we have many case studies of the way that, our non-traditional investment background has really, really helped to transform these businesses in the early stages. So that's what we're excited about.
And I think at the end of the day, as women running a fund, we invest in the world as we see it. And so it's not surprising if you look under our portfolio that we are a large majority investing in incredible women building incredible things that are really going to move the needle. We are living in a world where there's more women making decisions than ever, more women making capital decisions at home, wealthier women now than ever before in history. And yet we have so very little that has been built for us. If you think about even in terms of women's health, I don't think you know this, but women were excluded from clinical trials until 1993. Just 1993, say that again. And that alone gives you an idea of just how underserved this area has been. So it's not just a must-have, because we women, of course, are the center of the world and need to be taken care of. But it's an important business opportunity that we want to take advantage of and accelerate. And our thing of business development isn't just so that we can be helpful. It's really about getting those companies from pre-seed to Series A and make sure that they are positioned in the best way possible with the best investors investing them with plenty of capital to deploy, and really giving those companies the best chance they've got to make it up to those IPO results and exits. And we all know that there's not enough women that have reached that IPO goal, that have exited, and not enough women are being funded. And so there's definitely a lot of that we're extremely proud of. And we believe in conscious capitalism, and we're absolutely capitalists through and through, but we believe in doing that in a conscious way, and to drive society forward by investing in great businesses that satisfy the needs of actually the way the world looks like.
Which is so impressive, Assia and Rachel, because if we think that less than 2% of VC money goes to women-founded companies, there is so much work to do, and you are really doing it. And you're going from strength to strength, which is inspiring. And I love your approach that you really put serious business development into the companies that you seed fund to get them to the stage where they really have a platform to make it. Because those months or years or whatever it is are really crucial for a business to succeed. Rachel, you have talked about the superpower. What do you think is your superpower as a pair leading Muse Capital?
Oh, goodness. Well, obviously, we're able to bring something valuable to the entrepreneurs at the table. And honestly, I think, Assia and I are different in many different ways. Well, we are similar but very different in terms of complementary as a team. And I just think that we look at the world from a different lens. If you think about the traditional venture capitalist, they've all come from a very similar background and path. And for us, we've traveled the world, we've had many different roles, and just having that different perspective, and quite frankly, being two women at the helm, and between Assia and I think we've experienced and suffered every women's health issue there has been. I think for us, it's, being tech savvy ourselves, and, being brought up in a generation where we're using things like Uber, Airbnb, Instacart, and then all of a sudden having to deal with women's issues and realizing how backward and broken the existing platforms were. I really think that gives us the edge, because we don't just have the business experience, we also have the personal experience. And we actually have some amazing stories around that, if that's of interest.
It's really of interest, Rachel, because I think you're two disruptors, and therefore you're not afraid to invest in disruptors, because you're one of them. And that to me is really sort of paramount in deciding to invest money into your fund, to then invest into these companies. You're not afraid to believe in something when someone is really having a big dream and really trying to disrupt a space.
Mm-hmm. I agree. We've been in the thick of it. We're operators, and I mean that with capital operators, because before starting Muse, we've been in the thick of it. We've sat on public boards. We've accelerated tech companies that are now public. We have truly been advising leaders at the highest level and their executives within those companies to try and execute and get to a final goal. And there's very few people who have had that kind of, again, 30-year experience combined, traveling the world and accelerating these types of businesses, and now putting checks behind what we do. So it's really exciting. And as you asked before, sort of what sets us, what's really connects the two of us, I always say, like a good marriage, you want to arrive at the same end goal, but you get to it differently in a different way. And I think that's really what makes us so magical. Rachel and I want the same things in life. We just have a very, also between ourselves, it's a really complementary way of getting to it. And I just do have to flag up that my work wife here is a Kaufman Fellow, which for those of you who don't know is one of the most highest, most prestigious groups to be invited to be part of in the area of venture capital. And so really, it's not just our background that makes us able to do what we do, but it's really at the highest level of venture at this point, 8 years in. So it's really exciting.
And you've just been mentioned in an article, I believe, sitting alongside real heavyweights in the VC industry. So I want to commend you for that. What would your top tips be for other women, Rachel and Assia, now that you've been in for 8 years?
Women in general, or women trying to get into venture?
Well, why don't we say, younger girls trying to get into a VC, or even women starting companies and needing funds? What would your tips be?
Oh, so many. Where to start?
I think on the female entrepreneur side, if you're trying to raise capital from venture funds, I know this is just my advice, I guess. I mean, everybody has different ways of doing things, but I think, at a venture capital firm, we get thousands of cold emails every week, wanting to look at their various businesses. But for us, it's all about, how can you hack these things? How can you, for us, Assia and I treasure relationships, and we've built incredible relationships across our network over 30 years. So for you as an entrepreneur, get creative and think, how can I get in front of these people without, necessarily it being a cold call? There must be a warm introduction, because if you can find a way to get to us, it's already telling us something about you as an entrepreneur and how you think and how you stand out. And then in terms of, the typical way that funding works and it depends if you're a CPG company or if you're a technology company, but on the tech side, you really want to, especially in this market today where capital isn't as easily accessible, you really want to show that, you can make things work on a budget, and that you have a customer that really does like your product. And so for us, it's about, you need to have some early metrics, and then if you can find a way to get to us, then obviously that's going to say a lot about you, and then take it from there. I think this is all about thinking differently and just being prepared. Being prepared and thinking out of the box. Don't do what all these other sheep do. Just get creative and think about how you can be in front. And quite frankly, that's how we have so many examples of that in our career. I found times when I've really wanted to get in front of somebody, and I have literally sat in reception rooms of office buildings, just knowing that person is going to come out.
I said when we first met her, she's the most elegant stalker. We met because we were doing a business deal together, and we had to go against each other on a deal. And I thought, she's the most elegant stalker. Who is she? I need to work with her. That's it. So she knows how to do this.
Yeah.
I love that story.
My thing is, I want more women investing, period. Whether you are an angel investor and you're backing businesses, or investing in funds like ours, or considering to pivot out of a career in a certain industry and potentially consider becoming an investor in one way, shape, or form, I would encourage more women to do that. We need more women investing. We're good at it. I hate to be a generalist, but it's true. Women are very good at investing. And really, again, with the preparedness part, really thinking about investing with an eye on results. Because if 10 years from now, we look back at this wave of more women and diversity at the helm of capital, and those success stories are not there, we will have done a disservice to this entire movement. So we have a responsibility to be successful, not just a little bit successful, but best in class, so that more investors can come back, and so we can continue to raise more additional funds. And so preparedness is important, making sure that when you're deploying capital, whether it's as an angel investor or as a fund, that you're making sure that you're doing a research on size of the market, opportunity, how big can this be, to really try and focus on the results, and not just the short-term impact, because I think we deserve that as a people and as a women, and in 10 years, that's the results are going to matter, and we hope to be a big part of that statistic in the positive way.
Yeah, I know this will happen, and I'm deeply inspired and super excited. Assia and Rachel, what are your plans and dreams for your future, Muse Capital's future?
Ooh, world domination.
It's true. She's not kidding.
Honestly, I think the more Assia and I do what we do, we realize how important the work we are doing is. And it has honestly been the hardest part of our career, but also the most rewarding, because you have to think to yourselves, to start a fund from scratch, be two emerging managers without the traditional investing background is certainly one of the hardest things you can ever do, because you walk into a room and typically it's a very particular audience that you're looking at, especially when it comes to that like LP base or the investor base, and they're not used to seeing somebody like you with a different background. But something that Assia and I knew from the start is that we could provide something very valuable despite our different background. In fact, it's what made us special. And so for us, that sheer belief and determination that we were going to be able to make a difference is what's, honestly taken us here today. And, as you look under the hood of venture capital, you realize it is very broken. And it's because it's a typical boys club where all of the investment goes to the same groups. All of the deals go to the same groups. And until you actually go in and penetrate that or create your own, it's never, ever going to change. And actually, there's a ton of research out there that shows you how little funding is going into female entrepreneurs. But why do you think that is? It's because the people that write the checks don't look like them. And so actually for us, we believe it's far more important that money gets into the hands of check writers and to female and diverse fund managers, because until we fix that very public stat is not going to change. And the stats are, in the whole venture capital space, I believe it's only 15% are women. And of those 15%, hardly any of them can actually write the check or have the ability to write the check, because then they have to go to their all-male investing committee. And so we break the loop. And so until more women actually have control of money, that's not going to change. So we really believe in that. And so, in terms of the things that we invest in, of course, we are extremely passionate. We lead in women's health. And between everything from egg freezing to, 360-degree clinics for women over 40, we see the power of what we're actually doing here. And so in terms of, future goals, Muse Capital, we want to be a global brand. We want it to, really stand for, profit, but for purpose, right? We're trying to put money and dollars into entrepreneurs that are, really making the world a better place. And, we're seeing it firsthand, and it's still very early, because the typical cycle in venture is you're not seeing the returns for 7 to 10 years. And so for us, we're now seven years into the journey, and we're just starting to see, as Assia mentioned before, we've been investing in the women's health side of things for 7 years. So before it became a big thing. And those first checks that we put in are now being, led by the biggest funds in the world. And so for us, we just think it's a matter of time. And we think the work that we're doing is extremely important. And just watch this space. We're going to have Muse US, Muse Europe, Muse Asia. And we're so excited and so passionate, if you couldn't tell.
There's going to be, sooner than you think, when people are mentioning Sequoia and Andreessen, they'll also, it's true. The numbers and the stats are all pointing in that direction, and certainly our ambition is pointing in that direction. And we have the scars to prove how long, what we've gotten to thus far, but we're definitely going to be 100% at the level, if not surpassing the level of the Andreessens and Sequoias of this world. But we are growing organically. We want to do this right. This is not something, this is not a one-hit wonder. This is going to be something we're going to do for the rest of our life and continue to do. And we're pretty proud of the way that we're doing, and we're just going to keep doubling down on what's been working so far.
And I would like to draw the attention to the listeners and say that you have a funding round going right now. You're raising 45 million to deploy more money into your 3 buckets that is really purpose driven, which is very important, I think, and very inspiring and very attractive. So people should get in touch with you, Assia, or you, Rachel, at Muse Capital to participate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for supporting us.
And for us, it's very important to us that we have investors that also are female, because unfortunately today, unfortunately, I shouldn't say fortunately, we have an incredible LP base, but 90% of them are actually male. And that's okay, but it would be great to be able to bring this opportunity to, more powerful women, because
we want to make them wealthy too.
Exactly.
That's what we're here for. Thank you so much to both of you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.